everyone. I want to wish all of the mothers out there a very happy Mother's Day. I know that it's going to be for you. It's going to be different for us this year. A lot of us are not going to be able to be in church, and maybe some of your family can't come around or different things, but nevertheless, we want to give honor where honor is due. I think about a man, and God made us out of the dust or the dirt of the earth, and every woman will tell you, well, that's the gospel truth, because there's not anything any more messy than a man. But you know, the woman wasn't made from the dirt or the mud. The woman was taken from the man, and she was made exquisitely for him. One equal to him, to be a helper for him, not to be a slave, not to be a servant, but to be an equal helper with the man. She has strengths that the man doesn't have, and the man has strengths that she probably don't have. And so I like to say it like this, guys. As bad as we hate to say it, we are just the leftovers. God took the good stuff and he made the woman out of it. So we want to wish everybody a very happy Mother's Day today. We will be in church at New Bethel this morning at 11 o'clock. Of course, we're going to be doing our social distancing. We'll be 6 foot apart. There'll be no choir. There's plenty of hand sanitizer for us to use. We're not going to shake hands, hug necks. We will sing in the seats. We have songs prepared. We're looking forward to a special message from Pastor Tom. Pastor Tom hadn't filled the pulpit since his resignation in December, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. I know it's built up in there like a volcano, and it's going to erupt on us this morning, and we're certainly looking forward to that. As we begin to look at the Word today on Mother's Day, naturally I want to talk about mothers and something special about mothers. And so I'll do that. I want to go to the Old Testament to get an example of a woman that was very extraordinary. In 1 Samuel 25 and 2, the Bible says, "And there was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel. And the man was very great, and he had 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding, and of a beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb." When I think about Mother's Day, the Bible is full of wonderful examples of mothers. And oftentimes they don't receive the attention that the men do. But these mothers are the ones that saved nations. Think about it. Moses' mom saved the nation when she made a decision to hide her child. These mothers raised these children to make a difference in the nation. And so here we have a family. We don't know anything much more about them except this man was rich. He had plenty of goods. He had plenty of sheep. And in the Old Testament, names always meant something. We know that in the beginning, Abraham was just Abram, but he became Abraham. God changed his name from High Father to a Father of Nations, because that was his destiny. That was what was going to happen in his lifetime. And most of the time in the Old Testament, a name came either from surrounding circumstances or what they felt this child was going to be in the future. Isn't it a shame? How would you like to be named Nabal? We find that his name means that he's a fool. He's foolish. He's not wise at all. I don't know how a mother could look down at a baby and call him a fool. I mean, he's just born. Well, I don't know. Maybe the name came to him later on, but that's what the name Nabal means. But you take Abigail. What does Abigail mean? Abigail means a cause of joy. Have you ever met people that it was just a joy to be in their presence? Have you ever been around? There are men and women this way, but women too, they'll come up and just, it's a joy and a pleasure to be in their presence. And I believe that probably this is the type of person that Abigail was. She brought life, she brought joy, she brought all of these things when she just showed up in her presence. Now, they call him a churlish man. What does the word churlish mean? It means a bear of a man. Harsh, rude, brutal. Man, that's not saying very much about a man, is it, to be like that? But hey, we'll be honest, I've known people in my lifetime just like that, men that were like that. It's not a godly thing, but sometimes they think, I guess that's just the way they've got to be. And so she brought all of this charm and all of this beauty to this family that otherwise would be depressed, cast down, and living in fear all the time. Not only did she have charm, she had spiritual insight. I don't know where she got it. I do know that there was probably a school of prophets around. I'm sure that she had to be able to sit under the teaching of some of these prophets because she knew too many things. She had too much spiritual insight and wisdom, but she was a very, very bright woman. Now we find in this story that David is running from Saul. We know that David has been anointed to be the king, but Saul tried to kill him and he had to run for his life. He's living in wilderness places, having gathered around him about 600 men. But while he's out there, he's not just camping out. He's looking after the herds of the people that live in the region. He protects them from enemies. He protects their animals from being stolen. And so at the end of the season, when it's time for them to shear sheep and to have a feast and to kill some animals, it was just a simple thing for him to ask of these people to give him and his men something to eat because they had done a service. They had protected them. They had worked for them. So David sends 10 young men to Nabal to do the very thing. He said, you go speak in my name and tell him that we protected all of your goods and just whatever's in your heart. See, David didn't even ask for anything. He didn't even put a number on it. He just said, you do what you feel like's right in your heart. And Nabal just came unglued. Like the churlish, evil man that he was, the drunk. I mean, not only was he mean, he was a drunk. And here he just said, who is David? And he just made fun and mocked him and ran the boys off, didn't give them anything. Well, they go back and report this to David, and all of a sudden, revenge rises up in his heart, and he's ready to go clean house. He got 400 of his men together and had them to strap on a sword and said, listen, we're not going to leave one single male alive by in the morning. We're going to kill them all because they have treated us this way. Well, it just so happens that one of the young servants of Nabal had witnessed the entire thing, and he runs to Abigail. Isn't it amazing how people know where to go when they really need help? So he goes to Abigail and tells her the entire story. And she knows, because see, I believe she's been sitting under the prophets. She knows David's supposed to be the king. She knows God's with him. She knows what they've been doing in other places. This is a powerful man with a powerful army. And she's got to do something as she uses exceptional intelligence and put it all together. She told her servant, said, you go out there and you get me 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, a bushel of roasted corn, 100 raisin cakes, 200 fig cakes. You get them on a donkey. You get them ready right now. So she sent them out, and she was right in behind them. Then all of a sudden, she's coming down one slope of a hill, and David is coming down another slope of a hill, and they meet right there in the valley. Now, the important thing I want you to see about this is I want you to notice how wise this woman was. I want you to notice how special she was. Beginning at reading in 23, and when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off her ass and fell down before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground, and fell at his feet and said, upon me, O Lord, upon me, let this iniquity be, and let thy handmaid, I pray thee, Speak in thine audience and hear the words of thy handmaid. I don't know where this woman received her wisdom, except it had to have come from God. But look at the wisdom, taking responsibility. She had nothing to do with this, nothing. But she, in her wisdom, took responsibility for this, demonstrating tremendous leadership. You know what a true leader will do? Now, you may disagree with this, but now I've got nearly 50 years of experience in ministry. I know that it works. A true leader will take responsibility for things when he had nothing to do with it in order to bring peace. Now, I know our ego as a man rises up. I know our vengeance as women rise up. We say, oh no, if I was not guilty, I'm not taking responsibility. Look at Abigail. She said, me, look at me. Oh, it's upon me, David. Let this thing, listen to me, it's upon me. Humility. Humility. Here she got off her donkey, laid her face to the dirt, and then rose up, probably still on her knees. Humility. But I want to tell you something. She was the strongest person in that crowd that day. There were 400 strong men, and David right before her, her little servants there with the donkeys and the food. But she was the strongest person that day because of her humility. In verse 25, she goes on and said, let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, that's a child of the devil, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of the Lord whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as my soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal. Here she begins to speak spiritual things. See, she's speaking to the heart of David. She's speaking to the man that sung psalms to God while watching the sheep. She's singing and saying to a man, look here, there's a spiritual thing here. God has helped you today. The Lord has kept you today from shedding innocent blood and these things. Listen in verse 27. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto the Lord, let it even be given to the young men that follow my Lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thy handmaid. See, she took responsibility. For the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in thee all the days of thy life. Now that sounds very simple, but to me, a man, that's kind of comical. See, she knew that men have egos, and so she played sort of on that ego, although it was spiritual insight. She knew that there was someone chasing David. She knew he was running for his life. She knew he had been anointed to be king in the future, and she's speaking that, a vision of the future, into his life. And she spoke to that, and it touched him. And it goes on to say in verse 31, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto the Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself, but where the Lord hath dealt well with my Lord, then remember thy handmaid. She talked about his future. What a bright woman. She understood that in the future, when you become king and you sit down on the throne, you're going to remember this. You're going to remember all the people that you killed, causeless. There's no cause to do it now because I have brought you the food. I have interceded. I have asked for forgiveness. And David heard her to the saving of her household. I don't know how many there were. The man was a great man. So I don't know how many were in the household. All I do know is this. She saved the entire household. So there was 4 little things here. She had heavenly spiritual intelligence. Girls, listen. You can hear from God as well or maybe better than a lot of the men can, because their minds are all captivated by natural things, and you can get in touch with God to the saving of your household. She had a heavenly intelligence, but look at the self-control. You know, most of the time when trouble comes, I mean immediately, rushes into our face, we men want to get in a fight like David did. We want to fight. The girls just fall apart and go to crying. What am I going to do? Screaming. Not this woman. She had no emotions about this. It was all her. She had it together. She knew what she had to do. She got it done. She was a woman with self-control. Not somebody afraid. Not somebody that just shooting in the dark. No, she had her act together. And she had a ton of common sense. There's a little thing going around on Facebook. Many of you probably seen it. It said, at the end of the day, common sense will save us. But the next line says, a lot of you are in trouble. And I'm afraid that may be some truth in that, because we don't see a lot of common sense anymore. This woman was full of it. I think of my precious wife, Mott. I've never met anybody, man or woman, that had more common sense and able to do things than Miss Mott. The joy, the love of my life, one of the smartest women that I've ever seen. And it all came from the Lord and out of common sense, not by some huge education. And the last thing, she had vision. She had a vision of what the Lord wanted to do. There's three little lessons right before we close I want you to get out of this. The number one is that even though she was married to a devil of a man, she remained married to him. We know that she told him the story. He had a stroke or a heart attack and died a few days later, but she was married to that man, and she stayed with him, served him, did everything he needed her to do. She was an honorable woman, and she remained with that man. Now, sometimes that can't happen, but I'm just saying this woman did. The second thing she did, she had, along with her wisdom, great humility. Humility, as I've already referred to, will always win the day. And then lastly, let me speak to you mothers that may have daughters or sons about able to get married. We need to teach our children, and if you're a young person unmarried, you need to listen to this. We don't marry lost people. Christian girls don't need to marry lost men. If they do, they'll spend a lifetime of misery. In my nearly 50 years, how many young girls have sat in my counseling room getting ready for marriage, and I speak to them out of my heart. But they say, but I believe I can change him. I believe he'll change. Once we're married and I get him in church, he'll change. I don't have any good record. I don't have one name I can give you. I don't have one example that I can give you. The Bible says not to be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. We need to teach our children that, and if anyone listens to this posting today and you're single, you need to listen to that. This woman was caught in an awful place because she had married someone that was churlish, who was brutal, who was hard, who was mean, who was a drunk. And he never did change. But thank God for the Abigails of the world. Thank God for the Abigails of the church today that has wisdom and humility and leadership ability. And today is to honor mothers. There's not any greater honor that we could give unless it was to the Lord Jesus Christ himself. We honor the mothers that shape the children that leads the world and the church. Remember that. So I want to say one more last time, Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful day. Maybe you can assemble. Maybe you're going to drive-in church, or maybe this is your church. But if it is, let me just say, you have a wonderfully blessed day today.